Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
FunBelt PodCast.
FunBelt PodCast.
FunBelt PodCast.
FunBelt PodCast.
It's just a great conference that is at a point right now where I think clearly the best group of five conference in the country.
The state of Sunbelt football is the strongest in our history.
And we got to continue to showcase what our league is about.
Another edition of the Sunbelt Conference focused podcast of the FunBelt PodCast. The only man that can get his own special introductory music. 25 years in the business, the sixth commissioner of the Sunbelt. We're with him until 2026. The one and only Keith Gill.
Well, thank you. Thanks for that introduction. I got to give a shout out to Earth, Wind, and Fire. September was my walk-up music at Media Day, and you can't have too much Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Well, Commish, I can't thank you enough for joining us, though. The biggest thing that I think everyone wants to talk about, conference realignment. Where is the Sun Belt? Has anybody reached out saying, hey, we want to be featured on the FunBelt podcast, so we got to be a member of the conference? Or are there people going, we've been on the podcast, we need the hell out of here?
Well, I think it's probably a little bit of both. But no, with regards to conference realignment, I feel like we're in a really good position. I certainly think if, a decade ago and kind of how conference realignment hit the Sun Belt and those big losses and kind of the choices that were made to kind of backfill those teams, we are in such a good place. And a lot of that is because we added Coastal, we added App, we added Georgia Southern. It helped us from a geographic standpoint. I feel like our geographic footprint is much tighter than it was or than what it could be if some of those things didn't happen. And then the quality of our football programs are top notch. And obviously you can see that by, having two teams ranked in the preseason this year, only group of five conference that has that. And so I think we're well positioned. It's a position of strength. I mean, obviously, we're watching like everyone else to see what happens, and there certainly could be some impacts, but we feel good about where we sit right now.
Keith, every guest that we have on, we ask a little bit about realignment. Should the Sun Belt be looking? So should the Sun Belt be keeping its eyes open for candidates? And every single person we've had on, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, they've all said pretty much the same thing. The Sun Belt is very strong right now. You've got the winning. You've also got the ESPN contract. You've got the footprint. There really isn't much to improve upon. But I do wonder with this goofy alliance between three of the top or the Power Five conferences, does it behoove the Sun Belt and other group of five conferences to at least be in talks about maybe consolidating schedules or coming up with sort of a framework of some sort of secret handshake deal?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. What I would say is I think we're always talking. So I'm in constant contact with, we have regular calls amongst kind of the group of five commissioners just to talk about all kinds of things and issues and those things. All of the FBS commissioners have regular kind of conversations as well. I think as it relates to realignment, I think more than one thing can be true, which is I think the Sun Belt is strong exactly kind of where we are and how we're configured. But that doesn't mean there could be opportunities for us to kind of strengthen our membership. And if those kind of presented themselves, I think we'd be open to that. So, I just think that, all things are on the table. I think what's most important, though, is, we feel like we're in a place of strength. We feel like we can add some strength if necessary. We feel like we can stay exactly where we were and we'll be stronger. And I think that we're just much better positioned than we were in 2011, 2012, 2013, when some really significant things happened that put the league at risk, really. I can't see any scenario like that, which I think makes us feel like we're in a really strong position. And then the question is, what do we want to do and how strategic? We want to be obviously very strategic, and whether that's staying put, if there's some, good opportunities out there to add members, we'll obviously consider that as well.
So here's your hot seat question. I had an athletic director talk to me about, in his pocket, he always had a short list. So baseball coach gets ran over by a bus, basketball coach does this, the football coach that. Here's my top guys. Do you have your list of who's your short list of this university says they're out of here? Who's your first call?
Yeah, we really don't have a short list in that regard. And I would say anybody who has that short list doesn't work in a bureaucracy, because, my short list, you take that to Texas State, you take that to App State, we all have kind of a lot of interests that we're aligning. So, I just think there's a lot of folks out there in the landscape that, could make sense. There's a lot of folks that don't make sense. I think at the time, you never know who's going to be on the board. You never know who's going to be where. That's why I think our position is so good, because if we end up exactly where we are, that's a good place for us. And that's great. And if there happen to be some, blockbuster opportunities out there for us as well, we can take advantage of those. So yeah, we don't really have a short list, and, we're obviously, trying to keep our ear to the ground to just really understand, where this is all heading. Because that's the one thing I will tell you. Anybody that tells you they know where this is going, they're lying, and or they're about to win the lottery, one or the other. And I'm not about to do either. So I have no idea where we're headed.
Following up on that, it's on the internet, so it's got to be true. How was Huntington, West Virginia for you a couple weeks back whenever that was posted? Because you can't FaceTime or even Google Images or anything like that, Zoom, kind of like we're doing now.
You were physically seen.
Is to go.
No, well, here's all I can tell you. That was not me. I was not in Marshall in the last couple weeks. I'm trying to think of the last time I've been to Huntington. So
it was 2 weeks ago.
Years. It hasn't been days or weeks. It's been years. So that was not me.
It was a stunt double. That's what it was. It was a stunt double.
I feel bad that they have these looks. You know what I mean? Like, it's one thing. It was like, I saw he looked like Denzel, but he looked like Keith Gill. That is that's not a compliment. So I feel bad for whoever that was walking along on the streets of Huntington.
I feel safer and better, though, knowing that there is a stunt double. So nothing will happen to Keith Gill. Now, this guy might be dead in the streets, but Keith Gill is still running the Sun Belt.
Exactly. I would try to tell you guys it was a hologram, but, I'm not really that technologically savvy. So I think you would see right through that. So no, I have not been to Huntington in the last weeks, months. Years. I can't remember the last time I've been there.
All right. We have Commissioner Gill confirming that he was not personally incurring favor with Marshall. So there is one big rumor that we could finally put to bed. I did want to talk a little bit about what happened last season with Coastal Carolina, with Louisiana. We didn't get the championship game. There's a lot of people kind of grousing about that. I won't say who, Cajuns, but they seem pretty upset about that. Have you heard any more grousing? And there's pretty much nothing you could do about it, right?
Yeah, I just think everyone was disappointed. You think about it from a conference standpoint. We had two teams ranked in the CFP. In some ways, it was a New Year's Six kind of semifinal. It was a semifinal game to go to the New Year's Six, obviously, depending on what happened with Cincinnati and Tulsa. So we were going to be on ESPN. We were going to be in that 3:30 slot, which is like prime college football slot. So I think we were all, hyper disappointed. At the end of the day, it's COVID. COVID ruined everything last year. It's ruining everything this year. I felt good. I feel proud that the Sun Belt, we were able to play all our sports, play them on time. For the most part, we conducted all of our championships except the football championship. And I'm still sick on the fact that we had two ranked teams that were going to be on ESPN, that were going to be right there in that 3:30 kind of prime spot for all those eyeballs to see how good the Sun Belt football is. And we didn't get that opportunity. And the folks at Coastal are disappointed. And obviously, I know the Cajuns were disappointed because they certainly wanted that rematch.
Well, and you spoke about 2020 specifically and managing and waiting truly uncharted territory for anyone. I mean, as many folks have said across the nation, there was no roadmap for this. It hadn't occurred. The global pandemic certainly impacting college athletics in 100 years. How from your seat and in your conversations with presidents and athletic directors, administrators, how is the Sun Belt doing and managing post 2020 and kind of even moving in, obviously, in 2021, as we know, football drives the bus for the vast majority of these schools, and understanding the financial ramifications, coming off of that.
Yeah, I think we're doing well. I would say the one thing as we head into 2021, I don't love our vaccination rates of our student athletes in football. I certainly wish that could be better. We've got, obviously some teams doing better than others. So that's one place because, disruption, we just don't want disruption. We had it last year. I feel like we managed it pretty well thanks to our student athletes and our coaches and our ADs and their flexibility. This year's going to be a little different. We're not rescheduling games. We plan to play our game on the Saturday after or the second Saturday after Thanksgiving. Is when our championship game will be. And we don't have that kind of 2-week cushion to move games around. And so if we have disruptions this year, those are going to be forfeits, at least in the league's eyes. The NCAA will look at them as no contest, but we'll certainly look at them as forfeits. So I do wish our vaccination rates are up, but I feel like, we have good protocols. Our ADs, our coaches, and our students are doing, really good. We're in a good place financially. We've got our new TV deal with ESPN. It really doesn't kick in until next season, but we already have some additional games on linear kind of just through, those conversations and partnerships. So I think that's really positive. We've got 2 teams ranked in the preseason. We've got a lot of really good momentum, and we've got some good opportunities out there, Now, unfortunately, sport is, you're probably, in football, 5 or 6 plays away from winning or losing in most games, the ones that are close. And we need those 5 or 6 plays to break our way this year like they did last year. And if we can do that, we can have a really special year. The one thing that we have left on our football kind of wish list or our goals or the things that we want to do is play in a New Year's Six Bowl. We've not done that, and I'm hopeful that this year is the year we get that done.
Well, we've talked about that quite honestly the last few weeks. Part of that is scheduling and working through September, in most cases, with these non-conference matchups. We've talked about how the Sun Belt, the traditional powers have enormous opportunities. We've talked, Dusty and Jeremy, in the last few weeks, enormous programs, enormous opportunities. We know what the Sun Belt has done really in the last 4, 5, 6 years, going in and knocking off Power Fives in some cases, like the Cajuns last year, looking pretty good doing it. It wasn't quite an upset when you beat someone by double digits. How do those conversations go? And obviously that's another step forward when you talk to those other group of 5 commissioners that you referenced a little bit earlier. Just kind of seeing where the Sun Belt fits in terms of, hey, this is what we can do, this is what we can schedule, and as you mentioned with ESPN, leveraging that to more interest, more TV spots.
Yeah, I think one of the exciting things that, at least in this offseason, is it seemed like when you read kind of what folks say, the Bill Connollys and the folks that we're always reading, it really seemed like everyone thought clearly we were the second best team. Now, our goal is to be the first best kind of in that group of 5. We want to be number 1. Part of that is playing in New Year's Six. But thinking about where we were and how far we've come, it really shows our strength and shows kind of our football programs and where we are. So this year is about validation for us. It really is about going out and just playing well, the hard thing about sport is, you've got to make the next play too. It's not good enough just to make one play. You got to keep making plays, and that's the way we think about it, And so, we've got some really good opportunities in week 1 to really make some statements. We've got App and they're playing East Carolina to kick us off on Thursday, and then we've got some really big games on Saturday. When you think about Louisiana and Texas, you think about Baylor is going to Texas State. So that'll be a huge game, there in San Marcos. And so, those are all big opportunities to make statements and to have another weekend like we had in week one of last season.
You were talking about these big games, Keith, which some of them I'm very excited about. I feel like Texas State Baylor is going to be more exciting than what people are thinking. Definitely Louisiana, Texas is going to be a great game. Personally, I'm excited for Washington State and the Red Wolves that come later on. Do you attend any of these sort of big market games, or do you kind of stay at Sunbelt Central when it's time for those games?
No, so this year, so I want to say in 2019, I think I went to 29 live football games, maybe not including bowls. Last year, I only went to one live football game, and that was the New Orleans Bowl. So COVID. But this year, I'll try to get to 30 games. Like in the first 2 weeks, I'll try to go to 6 games. So like I'll be in Austin, so I'll go to Louisiana. I'll go to Louisiana, Texas, and then I'll shoot over to San Marcos, because those games, I think if I remember, start maybe 2 hours apart or 2.5 hours apart, and then I'll shoot over to San Marcos and catch the final part of that game. I'll be at App, East Carolina on Thursday night before that. And then the next weekend, I'm going to go down to Miami and try to hit all 3 games. So we've got App and Texas State and Georgia Southern are all down there. So App plays Miami, and then Georgia Southern, and Texas State play FIU and FAU. So I'll try to hit a portion of all those games. So no, I try to get out as much as I can, see our teams play live, try to get a feel for it, talk to the coaches, talk to ADs. Usually I don't travel as much to road games, non-conference road games, just because I would much rather be on a Sunbelt campus. But certainly, there's some big opportunities getting to Miami and seeing 3 games in the non-conference. The Louisiana Texas game I just wasn't going to miss, and it's nice that I also can shoot over to San Marcos and be on Texas State's campus, and hopefully watch them give a loss to Baylor. So
absolutely, I'd love to see that. That would be great.
Yeah. So in the first 2 weeks, I will have hit 6 Sunbelt games, and so I'll just kind of keep that going. Make sure I get to every campus. Make sure I see every team a couple times. So yeah. And I mean, obviously, that's my job and it's important. And but I love football. So watching football is not really work. It really is something I would be doing whether I was the commissioner or not. Since high school, every Saturday I've sat around watching college football. So I'm a college football junkie, and I just have a job that allows me to watch a lot of college football, which is great.
You mentioned earlier the ESPN contract. Take us kind of through that. What's like the rough payout that a school is going to get being involved in that? Does it have the ability to expand and maybe even contract if the Sun Belt just absolutely tanks? Not that I think they will, but
yeah.
Is there kind of a give and take?
So non-disclosures don't allow us to get like in all the details of the contract. I can tell you this, which I think is really important. One is, most of our contracts, if you have upheaval in your membership, you're going to have to sit down with your partner and kind of walk through that. I mean, that's just a natural part of the business. This is great though, because ESPN's been our partner for a long time. We've been with them for the long time. They're really the most important kind of media brand in college sports. And it's great that they've committed to us, one, for the long term, and 2, to have more opportunities in the linear space, and getting more games, particularly on ESPN and ESPN2, are really important as we think about, how our schools try to brand. So it really is a great opportunity for us. It's a great opportunity for us to showcase Sunbelt football. And I think one of the great things about last year that really showed us is people got to see those upsets. People got to watch them. They were on TV. And we had so much inventory on TV last year. And so we knew the value of that, and we thought this was a good opportunity to kind of expand that under normal circumstances, because certainly we got a boost from COVID in terms of the number of linear games we had last year. And so we wanted to try to capitalize that and get a few more going forward.
It it's very football centric. And I mean, it should be, but since that is kind of the money making sport, what about everyone else as far as men's, women's basketball, volleyball, even soccer, and on down the list?
Yeah. So from a linear standpoint, we actually have, basketball regular season games already. We also have our championship game there from a basketball standpoint. We're still working. We want to get our semifinals on as well. We do want to get our baseball championship game on linear. So those are things that aren't in this contract, or we certainly would have announced it. But those are things that we continue to talk about because they're really important to us. And obviously softball as well. We had 4 teams in the NCAA tournament in softball. I think there's a lot of upside and value to, one, the quality, but also to our softball championship. So we are continuing to have those conversations and trying to advocate to get more kind of linear opportunities for those other sports.
I know Jeremy's, really looking forward to the Red Wolves have a great bowling team, and he is upset that they are not more televised.
Yeah, to tell you the truth, we're not in Sunbelt bowling. We're actually in Southland bowling. Sunbelt doesn't have a bowling conference. Maybe Phil can help us out with that. Maybe
I might be aging myself here, but when I was growing up, they had that ABC Wild World of Sports.
Yeah,
bowling was on all the time, and I watched. My parents loved watching Earl Anthony, and so I used to watch a lot of bowling. So I'm not a very good bowler though.
So this is going to be the new niche, sort of new revenue stream for the Sun Belt. It's going to be bowling, and Keith Gill, you're going to spearhead this. So I appreciate you putting the time and effort and money into Sunbelt bowling. I have a few proposals that I put together in a shoebox. I will send it to you, and then you can use them or you don't have to. But
I know Gutterball Gill. I don't know that I can bring home the strike for you bowling, but I'll give it a shot.
Ben, re-rail us before we derail.
Yes. You did mention basketball, and that's certainly a topic that we have covered, and we will continue to cover, obviously, into the winter. But we know March Madness and looking to get back to some semblance of that. I know last year we had the bubble there in Indianapolis with Appalachian State, taking home the tournament title there. Just rewinding a few years ago, you did have the league that was continuing to build and continuing to grow. We saw seeds starting to get a little bit lower, not the typical, 14, 15 seed in that. How do conversations go with, not only athletic directors and things that way, but we know how strong football is, but, we know basketball is a one bid league at this point. And we have certainly, goals and the league as a whole wants to get multiple bids in as the schools do, and multiple opportunities for postseason, including NIT, I know CIT, CBI, hopefully those tournaments survive COVID basically, but just kind of want to get your take specifically on the NCAA tournaments for the men's and women's, and kind of boosting the league's fixture there.
Yeah, so we need to be better at basketball. I feel like we can be, a multi-bid league. I think it's going to take us some time to get there. I mean, if you kind of look at where our nets are, we don't have any top 100. We didn't have any top 100 nets last year. And so we've got some movement to play. But I think the simple bottom line answer is we need to get better. And I feel like, the conversations I've had with our coaches, they would totally agree and want to do that. Our ADs are the same way, and our presidents are the same way as well. So we actually are, we've got kind of 2 groups that are really kind of taking a deep dive into the data so that we understand kind of what kind of things that we need to do better. Do we need to schedule better? Where do we need to invest? How are we doing with all the metrics that you need to do in order for us to be kind of that, little engine that could and kind of keep getting better? Now, the thing that's really difficult for us is, these things will take some time. You don't turn around like not having any kind of top 100 nets in like a year and a half. It just doesn't really work that way. So we understand that. We're in it for the long haul in terms of trying to put some parameters in play. We'll have coaches kind of really kind of front and center, kind of working with us and with the administration to try to figure out what are our strategic plans for both men's and women's basketball to help that. Now, we've kind of done phase 1 of that with our championship, moving our championship to Pensacola, trying to have a more traditional model. I think it's really hard having like part of the championship on campus, part of it at a neutral site, trying to fly places, with 2 days notice, some of the kind of formats that we had, I don't know that it was conducive or as conducive to having the best basketball and the best basketball tournament. So I think being in Pensacola, knowing it's a neutral site, knowing when we're going to be there, it's going to help us generate fan, and it's going to help us generate fan. I thought the look and feel of the championship last year was terrific, even, in spite of COVID. So this year that's going to be better. I think it was better championship experience for our teams. So I think we've already taken a step with the growth of our championship and kind of Pensacola, the format, all the teams being there, everyone kind of men's and women's kind of in the same spot. I think we just need to take the next step with our regular season. We're kind of doing a deep dive, really starting this fall to kind of figure out, all right, how do we chart this course and how do we get better? Because we should be better at basketball, and we certainly can be. And all of our schools are committed to doing that.
You were talking about net, which, if I get that right, that replaced RPI.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you were talking about how it's going to take a while for the conference to start building up that sort of that currency in net, or if RPI be the same thing. One of the things that I found fascinating about the Power Five, which I never like talking about, but I will bring it up here, is that, for instance, the Big 12 and the SEC in the middle of the season will do like a little swap, and they'll play some games. Is there any chance that the Sun Belt could do something like that with a peer conference, say a CUSA versus Sun Belt showdown, that would really provide a little bit of spark? Or is that like is there just too much rivalry in basketball to even let that happen?
No, I don't think so. But I think it does depend on what you're trying to do. So, I think having some good regional games, I think is great. And a lot of our teams already play a lot of Conference USA teams like in their region. Gap plays, Charlotte, and, La Tech plays Louisiana. And so in hoops, there is some of that already. I think what I would say is, when you think about net, though, is like some of those games may not even help you, because if you're scheduling those games and you're playing teams that are 150 to 200, that's not necessarily going to help you. And so I do think, Jeremy, the scheduling piece is going to be really important in terms of how we build those schedules. How many games do we need in quad 1? How many games do we need to schedule in quad 2, quad 3, quad 4? And then how do we win those games where we need to win them? I would say that if you look at, if you look at kind of the way the things played out for us last year, and why last year wasn't so good, is, we didn't have as many wins as we would like in quad 4. And so that's one of the things we'll need to focus on, is making sure that, we're better there. And that's going to be more wins, and that'll inch us up a little bit more closer to that 100. And then what happens is it ends up feeding on itself, because if you can get 2 or 3 teams in the top 100, well, then you're playing conference games that are quad 2 games. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden you're getting, you're going to get quad 2 wins. That's what really helps the 8-5, is that, they play a non-conference season that almost doesn't matter, because a lot of those places where you're in the ACC, the SEC's better now, Big Ten, you play those games and they're all quad 1 and quad 2 games. And so you're getting, just by being in the conference, and that's where we've got to get. And I don't know that we'll get as many games as the Big Ten, but, we need to make sure that we have 2, 3, 4 kind of, top 100 games on everyone's schedule, because we have 3, 4, 5 top 100 teams. And once you do that, then you can start inching forward, and then you can get multiple teams kind of in the tournament. So it's kind of like a progression that you kind of follow up, and we've got to really, dive into the data and kind of understand, what the framework for the scheduling needs to be, and then how many wins we think we need to have in each one of those quads, and kind of talk through it, and make sure that we can kind of build a framework that allows people to have that type of success. Now, the thing that's hard is, the worst thing in the league is have everyone be 500, now, because then you get nothing, and so you still need to have, 4 or 5 teams that dominate, and get 75 to 80% of the wins in the league for kind of all to work, and so the math is it's really fragile, but we'll certainly kind of look at it and try to make sure that we have a good process to get us kind of where we need to be.
Dusty, did you have you wanted to talk a little bit about NIL, right?
Yeah, NIL. So that's been the big hot topic here in the offseason is NIL, name, image, likeness. What is really the conference's role in that, if any? And it seems like it's kind of a mess because it varies state to state, school to school, conference to conference, left to right. I mean, it's all over the place.
Yeah, I think that's why we really need a federal rule. We need a national standard. Unfortunately, the legal environment doesn't allow the NCAA to set a national standard, and so that's why the organization hadn't done it. And so we really need Congress to step in, because I think you're right. State to state, within our league, we've got, one school can do it this way, one school can do it that way. They're looking to us for guidance. We're like, hey, you got to check your state laws and you got to do this. We're trying to check state laws. So I think it's hard and it's complicated, and having one standard would be better. That being said, I do think that it's a good opportunity to have students be allowed to make money in the same way other students can. I think we spend all our time, one of the things I loved about being a student athlete at Duke, I feel like the Sun Belt is like this, is we're trying to give student athletes an experience that's like students generally, and I think that if, some sophomore can go out and do a bunch of TikTok videos and get a bunch of, or go out and eat burgers, and someone wants to like that and they can get enough of those likes to make some money out of it. I don't really have any issue with that. And I think it, I think it incentivizes entrepreneurship, and it's another type of education. I do think that people have to be careful. I read some of these deals and some of the things people are signing, and I think people need to make sure that they give the right care and deliberation to any of these things that they're signing, because that's a lesson that they don't want. You don't want that type of education where you're like, oh my gosh, I signed this lifetime deal. I got like 6 T-shirts, and now, they've got these pictures for the rest of my life. And when I blow up, I can't manage it. And so, I'm hopeful that people are using it in the right way. I do think it'll calm down a little bit as the market kind of settles. Some of these early deals, everyone went up in arms about the Miami, I guess it was a karate studio or some studio of some sort that gave, every player, some $500 a month or something like that. I think the market will settle some of those things out. I don't know that that's necessarily prudent use of marketing dollars. Maybe it is, and maybe they'll keep that going. But I think that, time will settle it out. So I think you're 100% right. It is absolutely crazy. I do feel like we need a federal standard, so there's kind of one rule that manages all of us. But I do think the overarching principle is a good one. And, I'm happy for student athletes, that they get the opportunity. I'm just glad they didn't have it when I was there, because everyone else on my team would have made money and I wouldn't have made it. So I didn't have that pressure of looking to my, locker, neighbor and being like, oh my gosh, this guy's making all this money and I'm making nothing.
Keith, I'm glad that you didn't have to suffer that sling and arrow of against your ego on that, because that would have been hard. But you did bring up something interesting. You're kind of talking about wise counsel, how these kids may not be receiving the wisest counsel. And we've seen some big moneyed programs like Notre Dame, for instance, come up with sort of a department that could handle or an office that can handle NIL stuff for kids and kind of give them guidance and stuff. Is there anything that prevents a conference from doing that? If the Sun Belt is a collection of schools that maybe doesn't have all the resources to provide such an office, could a conference like the Sun Belt provide that kind of guidance? Or is that something that you'd be like, I want to stay out of, I don't want any part of that?
No, we certainly asked our schools, because we had a kind of conference-wide committee where we were trying to educate our schools and talk about NLI. So we've been kind of working through this for 18 months in terms of educating our schools, and all of our schools kind of had an independent kind of thought in terms of how they wanted to educate their students. And I feel like they're all doing a good job. They're all doing it kind of different ways. Some are using some of the folks that you've heard of, Influencer and Open Doors and some of those, and some are using some others that you haven't. I think they all do the same thing, which is provide a platform for students to kind of vet opportunities, find opportunities, and understand how to use them. I actually think where the breakdown sometimes comes is, the way people access students and whether or not students are always patient enough to vet those opportunities through kind of some of that education and some of that framework that they have. And I think that's where it can lend itself to, not great deals. It's interesting. We haven't heard a lot about that. So maybe that isn't happening. I just worry that as we go on in time, we are going to hear a few of those stories where it's like, I wish I hadn't signed that deal because I got a bag of beans and I gave away these rights in perpetuity. I didn't know I was doing that, and that's, you guys have seen these contracts. They are, the fine print is always what gets you.
I definitely enjoyed the offensive lineman stories with local barbecue joints. I'm sure there's plenty of spots there at Duke. You could have found some places to eat. That wouldn't have been a bad NIL deal for you, would it?
No. Well, one, I love barbecue, so any NIL barbecue, I would have taken. Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, so that I would have been one of those people. You know what I mean? Like I would have signed my rights to be on a podcast away for a slab of ribs. As a 19-year-old. So
it's not too late, Keith. It's not too late to sell your soul for mere trinkets. If you would become an endorser of FunBelt podcast, we will get you a T-shirt. It may or may not fit.
Oh, so he's got to endorse it.
Yeah.
And if you listen close enough, he almost in his keynote says FunBelt. It's meant for him to endorse us.
Yeah, it's destined.
Well, actually, that does bring me to one question I had is so who had the idea? How'd you guys come together to put this podcast together?
Unfortunately, it's my brainchild.
Okay.
I don't know. I always wanted to host a podcast to talk about the Sun Belt overall. I've been here from day one covering ULM and their journey through the Sun Belt, as well as seeing teams come and go. And I just feel like the league overall has been overlooked when it's been one of the best mid-majors, one of the best G5, whatever you want to call it, that's really sustained all the changes that you've seen in college football since 2001, the first year. I don't know. I've always been attracted. I grew up on old Southland Conference football, so I always liked the smaller schools of, going back to the old Northeast Louisiana games, going to Northwestern, McNeese. So I've always had a special place for the smaller schools. Going to ULM was phenomenal. Met the missus there. Somehow I escaped Monroe. And I know I say that. I love Monroe. But someone explained it to me. It's like the boomerang effect. You can leave, but you'll always come back. And I told the person they were out of their damn mind when they told me that. And a week later, I got a job to go back to Monroe.
Yeah, you'll be back.
Yeah, I'm in Texas right now. I have no idea if the boomerang's going to come back. But, right now we're settled. So,
and I think part of it, too, if I may be so bold, Dusty, is that it has a lot to do with what you're doing at the Sun Belt, Keith, is that you've really elevated the game of the Sun Belt. And it really became time to where the Sun Belt can no longer be put beneath a G5 umbrella or be as a also going on as this is going on in the Sun Belt. I think the three of us really have this sort of passion to cover the Sun Belt in the way that isn't always covered.
Right.
I know that Tibbs is sort of our paternal figure. He's been around for so long carrying that water. And then me and Ben have sort of come in later on. And to be able to do this podcast and to talk to the commissioner and to be able to let people know what's going on with the conference is very important to us. And we really do appreciate you coming on to the show.
No, thanks for having me. Yeah, no, this is great. I look forward to the next time. Hopefully I didn't blow it this time. So
no, but there is
invite back.
There is one more question that I kind of promised people I'd ask.
I got the great fan question. It's probably the same one you have, Jeremy.
Okay.
It might. All right. I'll go first.
Okay.
And then you can kind of bring it back with probably a better one for the second.
Should I go ahead and start acting like they're static now? This sounds like a question I might need to, be like, I can't hear you. Oh, sorry, lost the connection.
Have you seen this milk crate challenge, and have you done it?
So I have seen it and I haven't done it, and I will never do that. I mean, that is.
You are a former college athlete. If anybody could accomplish the milk crate challenge without getting hurt, certainly it would be Keith Gill, right?
Well, one, I am not that I ever had a prime, but if I did, I'm well past it. So that's one.
Okay.
Some of those falls I've seen, the great thing is I graduated from college. I don't know how much I learned, but I learned something. And the one thing I learned was after seeing those falls, no, there's no way. I don't know that I can get up from that.
I think that you're missing a valuable lesson, and that is a lesson of gravity. And that can only be taught through the milk crate challenge. And I feel like you're sort of depriving yourself of this extra degree. All right, so we've learned two things before Dusty asks his question. One is that Keith Gill was not courting Marshall personally to come into the Sun Belt. That's been confirmed. And two is that not only has he not participated in the milk crate challenge, but he likely never will. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. If something went terribly wrong, if I'm climbing up those milkshakes, or someone offered me some ungodly amount of money, even if I failed to get it, and they gave it to me up front, because that's certainly one of those where your boys would be like, oh yeah, I'll give you some money. And then you did it and they never paid you. And you'd be in like a cast for, 6 months. So
if somebody like TCU or Baylor says to you, Keith Gill, we will join the Sun Belt, but only if you challenge us to the milk crate challenge and do it on TV, you would do it, right? Because you do it for the good of the Sun Belt.
Here's what I'll leave you with this. I would do it for the good of the Sun Belt. I would do the milk crate challenge for the good of the Sun Belt. However, I would work day and night to figure out another path to accomplish whatever that was without having me get on there and really injure myself in the ways that I've seen people fall on the internet, which is very strange after you've seen that happen, that you would even think I'm going to be the one to do it. Is very. I guess it's entrepreneurial. I can't
think of another commissioner with the physical skills that could possibly pull it off. So,
do you think Wright Waters could do it?
Yeah, Wright Waters can do anything. So of course.
No, there's no way that man would do it.
I know that you could beat the heck out of Mike Oresco. That's for sure.
Now Benson, I think Benson with enough liquid courage would definitely do it.
Oh, he's probably already done it.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good athlete though, baseball player, probably got good feet, I mean, the key is if I did it, I would only have 3 milk crates just lined up next to each other and just walk across them. Like part of it is I saw a dude, it looked like he had them like 12 to 15 milk crates high. I'm like, why would you do that? I mean,
that's the challenge.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'd have to downsize that challenge. So
Tibbs, help us bring this train back onto the tracks. And give us a good question for
16 hours in the car over this past weekend, going to and from a junior college to drop my son off where he is a student athlete. In there, I got to listen back to our great first ever podcast where I made the commitment to our listeners that when we have Keith Gill on, I will ask him, when are we getting Idaho back in the league?
Oh, God, no! Oh, Tibbs, I told you to bring us on track. Oh,
His obsession with the Kibby Dump continues. I apologize, Mr. Gill.
Oh, my gosh, that's so good.
I am so sorry for Dusty. I promise that will never happen again.
He has an unhealthy obsession with Moscow, Idaho. I don't know what it is.
I think he hasn't taken his pills. It's all that.
I will tell you, though, I've been to Idaho a few times. It is beautiful. I mean, I think, I actually love Idaho. I love the state. I love going there. So I've got nothing but good things to say about Idaho's and Idaho, and I love potatoes too. So
see,
I mean,
there you go.
Please don't be on Team Idaho though. We have a list, a chart of who's on Team Idaho, who's not on Team Idaho, and you can be neutral. I think that's probably a smart position for the commissioner to be.
Yeah.
But if you don't want Idaho, just blink twice. And then
One thing I would say is you can't hate on any state that has a bowl game where the Gatorade bath is like tater tots or French fries. You know what I mean? Like, is that the best coach dousing thing? I mean, I don't know that it gets any better than that.
See, that's much better than probably some of the Sun Belt traditions. So we got to bring more tradition to the league, Jeremy.
You know what? Now I'm beginning to fall into Camp Idaho.
Love it.
Might be a few more podcasts, but you might get me back in there. That might.
It's beautiful.
So, Commish, we're all over the place, as you can tell, but we greatly appreciate you joining us. It's been fun.
It's great. It's a lot of fun. So anytime, I'd be more than happy to participate. I really appreciate, what you're doing in terms of talking about the Sun Belt and getting our, information out there and branding us and saying good things about us. So thanks so much for that, because I do think last year was a breakout year for us. A lot of people who should have known about us didn't and learned about us, and hopefully we can keep that going this year.
Yeah, we're always looking for ways to brighten the league. I know your predecessor, Carl Benson, said it best. The future of the conference is bright. You got to wear shades, and just please don't ever bring back those shirts there, Commish. That's the only thing I ask of you is please do not bring back those shirts.
It wasn't enough for him to be the Sun Belt commissioner. He had to become the sun itself.
I love it.
That's so
All right, Commissioner, we are going to, unless anybody has any more questions.
I'm good. Thank you so much,
Good
Commissioner.
deal. Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me.